Hey everybody, it is You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Jesus Christ. That's what it says. Hey Steve, when it comes to some kind of God, I don't know if I believe in God or not, so what's the label I'm supposed to go with? My position isn't I don't believe in God because there's no evidence, but I don't claim to know whether or not he exists, like atheists. My position is, since I can't prove/disprove it, and there's no evidence for it, but there's a 0.01% chance that a God might exist, my conclusion is, I just don't know. I feel the same with aliens, Bigfoot, etc. Atheists call me wishy-washy and tell me to just cross over to the atheist side, saying, he does not exist. When they do this, it makes me feel like when the Christians would tell me, just believe, you believe in God deep down. I feel bad because I fight the same battle most atheists fight, but I also feel alone and like I don't belong in any community, and at times like I just don't belong in the world. So help me. Well, the label is really secondary. I mean, if you know who you are and you know what you believe and why you believe it, that's the most important thing. Finding a word for it is really a secondary concern. Now, having said that, what you describe sounds a lot like what is sometimes called pragmatic atheism. It's not quite the same. There's another term called igtheism, which basically it describes someone who thinks that it's not a sensible question, that because we have so little information, and in fact because it may even be impossible to have reliable information about a being such as God is postulated to be, that it's just not a meaningful question. When you say, I believe in God, or I don't believe in God, or God exists, or God doesn't exist, you're not actually making a meaningful statement, because we have so little to go on to judge whether or not that statement is true or false. That's not quite what you're saying, but that is sort of another category that I just was reminded of. And I think somebody asked a question about that a few weeks ago. There's such a thing as pragmatic atheism, which basically says that you recognize that you just aren't sure, but you tend to sort of default to the side of, well, God probably doesn't exist, which is what you're saying. You're saying there's a 0.01% chance that God might exist, but your conclusion isn't, therefore God probably doesn't exist. Your conclusion is, I just don't know. I mean, it sounds a little bit to me like pragmatic atheism, but honestly, the label is secondary. The way you describe your position, except for your final position of I don't know, it sounds a lot like me. It sounds a lot like most atheists. So I don't think that you deserve to be ostracized or isolated from the atheist community like you say you have been. And if I were you, I would, if you can't find a perfect label to identify yourself, that's okay. You know who you are, you know what you believe or don't believe and why, and that's the most important thing. Uzumaki Uchiha. Hey, Mr. Shives. My name is Kevin, and I'm 21 years old, and I have a beautiful white cat with blue eyes, and his name is Nieve, snow in Spanish, and he's 13 years old, which is old. He suffers from heart problems, he's blind in one eye, and last week he had a stroke, so I took him to the vet. They suggested that maybe I should put him down, because even if I'm able to treat all his problems, he will continue to suffer. Anyways, I think the humane decision is to put him down, so I'll go for that, but I'm so scared. So my 3 questions are, number 1, would you put Nieve down, and would you hold him while he is dying, or is that too hard? Number 2, how long would you wait to get another cat in my shoes, and would you? Number 3, how can I handle the death of my cat? I was thinking of moving back in with my mother till I was ready to be on my own again. Thank you, Mr. Shives. Love the channel. Well, I hate that you have to go through this. It sounds wrenching. I've only had one long-term pet that I ever had to face dying. That was my dog, who I had from the time when I was a child up until my early 20s. And that was, we didn't have to have her put down. She passed away naturally, but still it was just a wrenching experience. It was a horrible thing. I mean, you love your pet like you love a member of the family, like you love a friend or like a child or something. I completely relate to how you describe how close you and your cat are. And that sort of thing is just the inevitable emotional expense of having a pet for so many years and being close to a pet, and for all the unconditional love that they give you, and for all of the good times you have. That's the expense of having that, of getting to enjoy that. I mean, if the vet says to put your cat down and that's the most humane thing, I mean, if that's what my vet told me about my cat, I guess that's what I would do. It would be a very difficult decision, obviously. I feel like, trying to keep the cat around for my sake, even though she was suffering, would be selfish. I wouldn't want to do that to her. So I think if you do decide to have her put down, or if you've had her put down by the time you see this, I mean, I do think that's the right decision if that's her situation medically. As to whether you should hold her or not, or hold him while he's, I mean, that's such a personal question. I think I would probably just like, if we had to put Audie down, my cat, I would want, for her sake, for either me or my wife to hold her while it was going on. Just not for us so much, just for her, so she could be comforted. So I mean, yeah, I would want, if not myself, then someone else that she was close to be with her at that time. How long until you get another cat? I can't tell you. I can't tell you that. That's up to you. I mean, I know I still haven't ever had another dog. I mean, when my dog died, that's the last dog I've owned. And I mean, if I could afford one, or if I had a bigger place, I probably would have one now. But it wasn't, my point is, it wasn't something that I wanted to run right out and get another one. Like, there has to be a grieving process, and however long that is for you depends on your situation, on how you deal with it, and however you deal with it is fine. You don't need to be ready to have another cat by any particular time, or ever, if that's how it turns out. And how can you handle it? I mean, you seem like you and your cat are really, really close. It's going to be tough. It's devastating. It's devastating when even whether it's a person or an animal, it's devastating when someone you love dies. If you need to move back in with your mom for a while to get your head right, then that's what you should do. If you feel like you don't need to do that, that's what you should do too. I mean, people deal with things like this differently. When my grandfather died, I went to work the next day. I mean, I called in sick that day, the day he died, but actually it was, I called in the day after he died, and then the day after that I was back at work, and my boss offered me more time off, more bereavement leave if I wanted it, but I said no. I mean, for me it was better to just keep working, to just get back into the routine and keep going. But other people don't like to handle it that way. Other people are better off taking more time, and again, that's something that only you can figure out. And all I can say is I'm really, really, really sorry that you have to go through this, and I'm really sad to hear about your cat, and I hope you're okay. Shades MP5. Why do atheists always single out Christianity? I know you don't individually, Steve, but it seems like atheists save all their venom and vitriol for Christianity and ignore religions like Islam that actually deserve the relentless contempt and ridicule that Christianity receives. Shouldn't atheists practice what they preach and actually go to places like the Middle East and challenge Islam and use their skills to dismantle Islamic power to the point that there is a separation of mosque and state in the Middle Eastern world? Atheists will be seen on the wrong side of history, or at least silent when it comes to the great challenge of our generation, radical Islam, which in reality is literal or authentic Islam. Because the more faithful, religious, and literally one takes the Quran, the more radical a Muslim is. But for the sake of political correctness, easy understanding, and brevity, I am forced to use the term radical Islam. Thank you for the question. I disagree with quite a lot of what you have to say. First of all, I virulently, strongly disagree with you that radical Muslims are the more authentic Muslims. I think that there are quite a few very devout, very sincere people who we would probably describe as having a more moderate Muslim belief that would bristle at being described as inauthentic Muslims. I think it's very unfair to them and very unfair and disparaging to Muslim people in general to refer to the radicals as though they're the ones that are doing it right, as though they're the most authentic Muslims. Just as I would feel that it would be unfair, and it is unfair, to Christians to refer to radical fundamentalist Christians as though they are the most authentic, faithful Christians, and the moderate Christians are somehow just they're just not as Christian as the fundamentalists are. I completely reject that whole way of looking at it. Atheists single out Christianity. I don't think we single out Christianity. I think atheists like me, who live in the United States, or who live in the Western world in general, the United States and basically the Americas and Europe, I think we respond to Christianity more than we respond to Islam, because Christianity is the dominant religion that we encounter in our lives on a day-to-day basis, and Christianity is by far the most influential religion in our culture and in our politics. And I mean, you talk about Islam and radical Islam as the defining struggle of our time, the great challenge of our generation. I'm sorry, I don't see it that way. I feel as a member of Western society, as particularly as an American, I feel far more challenged by and threatened, and I see the rights of my fellow Americans far, far more threatened and under more frequent attack by Christians than by Muslims. There's no comparison at all. So I think that it's reasonable for Western atheists to respond more often to Christianity, because Christianity is not only more frequently encountered, but it's far more influential and far more potentially damaging from an atheist perspective to our society and to our rights and to our politics than Islam is. It's just a much more significant force to be reckoned with than Islam is. And on your one final point about your question, you say why don't we go into Islamic countries as atheists and try to convert them to atheism, or try to convince them of the value of secularism so that they have a separation of church and state. That I don't really think that's going to be very productive. Separation of church and state, secularism should not be imposed on a culture that doesn't want it from the outside. That's imperialist. That's colonialist. Even if we're sending a bunch of atheist intellectuals over there I mean, obviously that would be far preferable to dropping bombs if we drop atheists and just have them, try to convince people that secularism is a better idea. There's something, even in that, even in an intellectual argumentative exercise, there's something about that seems very invasive and very hostile. That sort of thing has to come from within, as it did in our culture, as it has in other countries around the world that have embraced a secular government and a separation of church and state. I agree with you that would be a much better system. I agree with you that theocracy is a bad form of government. But it is not our place, and I don't think it would be very effective if we just stormed into the Muslim world as Western atheists and tried to convince them that their form of government is wrong and they need to change their mind. I don't think it would work. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think that sort of thing has to come from within. They have to decide for themselves, as the nation of Turkey did. The nation of Turkey, which is an Islamic nation. It's demographically is an overwhelmingly Islamic country, but they have a century-long tradition of secular government. It's become a very important part of their culture, and that isn't because a bunch of Americans went over there and started pushing them around and telling them that this is the way they needed to live. It came from their own tradition and from their own culture, and that's the way it has to work. We can't force it upon religious people. You cannot force secularism on people who do not want it. Graphiest, hey Steve Shives, whenever I listen to most apologists, I find myself having little respect for either their cognitive faculties like Ken Ham, or doubting the sincerity of their beliefs like Ray Comfort. There is one that stands out for me, however, and that is Tariq Ramadan. While I disagree with his views on Islam, I do have respect for his intelligence, arguments, and sincerity. Are there any apologists for whom you hold similar respect? Yeah, the obvious one is C.S. Lewis. I can't really honestly think of any modern Christian apologists or apologists for religion in general that I have that kind of respect for. And I am not familiar enough with Tariq Ramadan to be able to say that I feel that way about him too. But historically, I would say C.S. Lewis. I think, and the thing that endears me to Lewis more than anything else is that he was a capable writer. And one of the most disheartening things about the Christian apologists that I critique for my An Atheist Reads series is how awful the writing is. Except for Lewis, not a single one of them has been what I would call even a passable writer. They're horribly, horribly awkward and just very poor writers, just very, very poor writers. And Lewis is not a poor writer. I'm not a huge fan of his writing. I was never someone who read like, the Chronicles of Narnia and thought it was like some really great shit. I'm not, generally speaking, a huge fan of him as a writer. But he has a voice, he has a wonderful intellect, he's very articulate, he has a great way of expressing things, he has a great way of framing his arguments in ways that are easy to understand and are very creative. And it goes such a long way. Even though I completely disagree with him. I think he's totally wrong. But I don't find him to be unreasonable, and I don't find him to be insincere, and I don't feel that he lectures or talks down to his audience. I don't feel that he is grossly misinformed when I read him. And those are charges I could lay very easily against the other apologists that I have read. So for me, my Tariq Ramadan would be C.S. Lewis. Snow Ibuki, question, Steve, what reasons do you think explain why society seems blatantly sexist when it comes to clothing and hairstyles? Also, how much would you say the sexism in the Bible has contributed to these social norms that negatively affect transgender people to this day? I think the main reason for sexism as far as expectations of clothing and hairstyles is because those cultural norms, those expectations are based on what men have historically liked. I mean, it's sexist because our culture has historically been extremely sexist and has valued the opinion and the taste of men over the opinion and the taste of women. I think it's as simple as that. I mean, obviously, when you get down to ground level, there's a lot more sophisticated, complicated stuff going on. But sort of zooming out to a broad view, a big picture view, it's because historically our culture has valued the input of men over the input of women, and men have been driving for most of human history. So we set the tone. We're the ones who made the rules. We're the ones who decided what was considered beautiful and what was considered not beautiful. We're the ones who decided what was considered fashionable and what was not considered fashionable. We're the ones who decided how women should wear their hair and what hairstyles are attractive and what hairstyles aren't, what hairstyles are appropriate and what styles are inappropriate. We decided all that. So of course it's sexist because we didn't ask women what they wanted. We didn't allow women to just figure these things out for themselves because why would they want or need our input in the first place? We decided based on what we like. So of course it's sexist. And as for the gender roles or social norms that affect transgender people, I did a video a few weeks ago on religion and gender roles called Get Back in the Kitchen, Saith the Lord. And it didn't specifically address how these gender roles have negatively affected transgender people. But a lot of the points I make in that video could apply to how transgender people are harmed by these sort of traditional expectations of gender roles. And I do think that the Bible and religion in general, the Bible most obviously in our culture, but religion in general, of course, has deeply affected how these gender roles are established and what these expectations relating to gender are. I think religion has been a very powerful force to sort of institutionalize and normalize and sort of root these expectations in our culture and make them very enduring and create the impression that these are not just social constructs, these ideas of gender roles, but that it's the default position, it's the norm, it's the natural order. That to me has been religion's most important role in all of this is propagating these gender roles and convincing people for many, many generations that this isn't just a preference, but this is how it's supposed to be. Michelle Templet, or Temple, I apologize if I mispronounced your name there, Michelle. Hi, Steve. I've been studying the Christ myth hypothesis for several months and am gradually coming to the conclusion that the mythicists have the stronger argument. My question for you is, do you think similar objections can or should be made about the historicity of other religious figures, such as Abraham, Moses, Buddha, or Muhammad? Thanks, Michelle. Well, yeah, absolutely. In the cases of Abraham and Moses in particular, I think it's a little different than Jesus. I am not a mythicist in the sense that I believe Jesus never existed at all. I do think there probably was a historical Jesus in some form. But for characters like Abraham and Moses, I'm capable of believing quite confidently that there was never any such person as Moses, or there was never any such person as Abraham. I would not be surprised at all, and in fact, I pretty much assume when I think about them and when I read those stories that Moses and Abraham never actually existed. There was not actually a historical Moses. I think they're totally mythical. But Jesus, I don't think, was totally mythical. Buddha, I think, is kind of in that same category too. I think there probably was a historical Buddha, but like Jesus, his most detailed biographies come down from traditions that are very flattering to Buddha and were written by people who believed very strongly in the message of Buddha and the religious aspects of Buddha. So it's hard to say how much of that is really historically reliable information. Muhammad is actually probably the most historical of all of them. I mean, I don't really know of anybody who doubts that Muhammad was a real historical person. Again, you have the same problem, and really Muhammad's problem is more akin to the same problem we would have reading the biographies of someone like Alexander the Great. You know, we know that Alexander the Great was real, but we know that there were a lot of stories about Alexander, like that he had gods in his bloodline. He was sort of the child or the grandchild of a god, or that he had supernatural powers, or there was something godlike about him, something miraculous about his life that should sort of, you know, inflame our skepticism. And the same thing with Muhammad. I mean, we know that Muhammad was a real person who did real things in history, but did he fly on a winged horse up to heaven and rap with God one night? I mean, did the miraculous thing, did he really hear the voice of God? Was he truly a prophet? Is the Quran really a revelation from God? I mean, these are all religious beliefs that there's not really any historical basis for, that if you're looking at it from a skeptical, historical viewpoint, you can just throw out the window. But it doesn't mean there wasn't a Muhammad. There almost certainly was, and there probably was a Jesus, and there probably was a Buddha. It's just much more difficult to discover real, reliable, factual, biographical information about them. But Abraham and Moses were as invented and mythical as Zeus or Thor. I don't know, though. Maybe there is something to that Thor shit after all. I don't know. That's a matter for another time, because now it is time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Amber A. I was wondering if you identified with any characters in the Bible. I know that most of the people are terrible, but is there a person that you might see yourself liking if they lived today? I personally find myself quite liking Esther. You know, I never saw what the hell was so bad about Eve. What the fuck did she ever do to anybody? And of course, as an atheist, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Thomas, the Apostle Thomas, Doubting Thomas. One of the most positive role models in all of the Bible, if you ask me, Doubting Thomas. Manga and Co-Addict, is the dress black and blue or white and gold? I see white and gold. I accept intellectually, now that I've read the explanations, that it is blue and black. I don't question that. But when I look at that picture, I see white and gold. McFly88, hey yo, Big Stevie Cool, who's your super secret gay celebrity man crush? Well, somebody mentioned in the comments that I've said in the past that it's Ben Affleck. It's still probably Affleck, although there are a few other ones. There are a few other contenders on the list. Michael Fassbender. I might have to fight my wife over that one. But Michael Fassbender is pretty cool. And you know who else has been surging lately? Perhaps the wrong term to use. Zachary Quinto. He's a good-looking dude. I'm just saying. Louis Ang 114. What do you think about daylight saving? I think it's silly. Just get up earlier. Just set your alarm. H. Constantine. Aren't Trelane and Q the same character? Oh, H. Constantine. Please turn in your nerd card. No, they are not the same character at all. Dangerously Talented. How about replacing the same Star Trek characters with YouTubers? Referencing my casting question by Jason with a D in the previous episode. Yeah, I think that's great. I call dibs on Riker. Clarence Crawford. Steve, how did you think of your Steve and Stuffy series? Well, it's the old adage, write what you know. I was having a conversation with Stuffy one day, and it was really funny. And I said, shit, man, we should do a video series about this. And Stuffy said, that sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, I can't really do the Stuffy voice very well. He does it. I don't really sound like him, but it was basically that. That sounds like a good idea to me, Steve. As close as I can get. Matthew Hill. Hey, Steve, could you explain the process you go through with your Atheist Reads series? Like how you pick what book to read, how you decide what chapters will be included in what video, things like that. Well, basically, it is a book that could be given to an atheist. That is, it's a popular apologetic that maybe a well-meaning Christian relative or friend would sort of present to an atheist to say, "Oh, read this and tell me what you think," or to try to convince them that Christianity is better than atheism. It has to be a book like that. And how do I decide what chapters will be included in what video? I go through the book before I actually properly sit down and read it. I go through the table of contents and look at page numbers, and I try to divide it as naturally as possible so that each video covers between 30 and 40 pages, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, depending on the book, but that's the ballpark figure. So sometimes if a book has longer chapters, a video will cover just one chapter. If a book has really super long chapters, a video might actually cover portions of a chapter. I've done that before. And of course, if a book has really short chapters, then per video there might be 2 or 3 chapters covered, or even more. It depends on the length of the chapters and the length of the book, how many episodes there are, and how much content is covered per video. So, hey, that's it for the lightning round. Kind of a short lightning round this week, but I'm not fucking complaining. Are you? Anyway, before I get out of here, it's shout-out time, my friends. And the shout-out this week goes to Godless Engineer. This is a channel by a guy who not only does his own thing and does it very well, but he is also, like seemingly everybody these days in the atheist YouTube community, a member of the Secular TV family. He is a member of Secular TV, like many other people I have shouted out in the past who are current or past members of Secular TV. He has a show on Secular TV, and he has his own stuff on his own channel, Godless Engineer. He has a series on logical fallacies, where he describes different instances of people using logical fallacies. He has a series, a 3-video series that is very close to my heart because it's about church signs. And a couple years ago, it feels like a long time ago, I did my own series of videos looking at local church signs and commenting on them and making fun of them. So I mean, I think that's a cool idea because I fucking did it, and he did it too, and it's really cool. He has a series on whether or not Jesus existed, speaking of mythicists from an earlier question. He has a series, not a series, but a recent video about the Shroud of Turin, how science explains the images on the Shroud of Turin. And he does interviews with skeptics and atheists. And in fact, just coming up here in the next week or so, he's going to do an interview with me. So watch for that, and watch his stuff just in general, because it comes highly recommended from this guy right here, Godless Engineer. Check out his channel, and if it's your type of thing, subscribe, show him some support, because I think he deserves it. It's a good channel. Godless Engineer. Well, that's it, everybody. I am done. I am out of here. I will be back again next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you ask me some questions, because in order for this whole wonderful thing here to happen, you have to ask. So leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next video. So I will see you in the next video, and until then, take care, everybody.